Welcome to our webinar on the evolving role of artificial intelligence in business. As we all know, AI can transform companies, but it also has unique risks and challenges. In this session, we're going to explore the Goldilocks dilemma, that fine line between using AI too little and risking falling behind, and using it too much and facing unforeseen consequences. We're going to explore first the incredible potential of AI, how it can boost revenue, streamline operations, and protect your data. The real risks of AI gone wrong, the legal, financial, and reputational dangers of the over reliance on AI, and then what we're calling the Goldilocks zone, how to strike perfect balance between maximizing AI's benefits while minimizing the risks. At the end of this seminar, we hope to equip you with the knowledge and strategies to make informed decisions about AI in your business and provide practical guidance on risk management when we're navigating this complex landscape. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Richik Sarkar. I'm a partner at Dinsmore and Scholl in the Cleveland office. I'm in our data privacy group, and I'm a commercial litigator. I used to be a chief privacy officer for a large company, which is how I've kind of come into understanding some of the risk management aspects of AI and the things that companies will probably be facing in the future. Joining me is my colleague Jarman Smith, who's also in our Cleveland office. And I'm going to turn this over to Jarman.
Thanks, Richik. So as Richik mentioned, I'm also in the Cleveland office. I work in the intellectual property group here and also handle cybersecurity matters. So today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, and we'll be jumping into the expansive role of artificial intelligence first. So to do this, we need to really talk about what is generative AI. So Gen AI is also known as machine learning or hard AI. It broadly refers to a group of technologies that utilize an algorithm given to it with a finite data set to process data, form new inferences, and make predictions beyond those provided in the original data. Given its many uses, Gen AI can be very valuable for businesses, and research estimates that Gen AI has the potential to add up to $4.4 trillion in economic value to the global economy. There are also some resources that are estimating that AI can contribute up to more than $15 trillion in the global economy by 2030. This technology now has the capability to produce credible software code, text, speech, high fidelity images, interactive videos, and even molecular models that can serve as the basis for curing untreated diseases. Developers can implement Gen AI in various contexts and for various purposes, such as robo-advising, trading systems, employee evaluations, and so much more. ChatGPT is a very popular large model of AI that you may be familiar with or that you have at least heard of by now. And this is an AI model that is widely used and it can process, it can classify general purpose natural language tasks. It can do a lot. However, although AI models like ChatGPT sound great, there are also several risks associated with their use, and that's important for us to highlight today.
One of the things that corporate leaders see with AI is the potential. They see how it can, as Jarman was talking about, how it can really help their business, how it can help their analysis of data, how it can open up and streamline certain tasks that they might not have otherwise have done. But the other side of that is that there are risks in using AI. Some of them are well known and some of them are hidden. But some of those risks include inaccurate outputs, biases in training data, large-scale misinformation, for example, and harmful impacts on people when some of these risks kind of manifest themselves. I often tell my clients, for example, that when they're using ChatGPT to do anything, that they should realize that those programs often treat good documents and bad documents exactly the same, and they're just correlating all of the information that's out there and putting things in there. So if there's a lot of misinformation out there, that misinformation is kind of baked into the results that you're getting from a ChatGPT or some of the more commercial available AI programs. I want to talk a little bit, before I talk a little bit about bias within some AI programs, I do want to tell people that if you have any questions, please feel free to put it into the chat. Um, we will, if it's something that we can deal with as the slides go through, we will. Otherwise, we'll probably hold them all until the end. So if you have questions, you can wait till the end. But if I see something that's in the chat that we can address right in the slide, I will go ahead and do so. But let's talk a little bit about bias in AI. Bias is a major issue. Again, AI is trained on data. And this is one of those things where if there's bias within the data, um, then you'll find that there's bias in the output. So, for example, if data is often coming from Asian users, and it's bias, it's data that's based upon Asian subjects, you're going to find that might discriminate against other races and women, especially if the data is from Asian men, or other men generally. There are gender biases that can kind of leak out of these things when everything is accumulated, and that often comes in areas of housing, sometimes in lending, sometimes in hiring. So, for example, um, in 2019, in studying some AI related healthcare data, researchers found that an algorithm used in U.S. hospitals was favoring white patients over black patients, and that was because the data that they were using was based upon healthcare cost history, which was correlated with race. So there were certain things just based upon the data that they're using that favored one group over another. In 2015, Amazon found that their hiring algorithm was biased against certain groups because it was trained on resumes that were mostly coming from men over the past decade. So because of the data that it was using, there were certain inherent biases that were coming out in the results of the data. Now, a lot of these biases really can affect businesses because of what we call the black box problem. There's a lack of transparency with a lot of these things. Most people don't know when they're using um, a, Google's Gemini program or ChatGPT or any other commercially available AI program, how the answers are, how the program is coming to those answers, what data was in there, what the assumptions were in the data. That's a black box. That means that you know what's in there, but you don't know what's coming out, and you don't know how it's making the decisions that it is doing. Those transparency issues really play a problem because if you can't explain how you got to a certain result, it really calls into question the legitimacy of those results. Now, we're going to talk a little bit throughout this program about legal and liability challenges, but one of the big issues with AI is the fact that AI development is moving much faster than the laws and the regulations that would govern it. So we're in an area that some people are going to be out there, and there isn't really any guidance they can look to tell them how they can be doing things right, what they should be avoiding, so they're not doing things wrong. But Jarman will take us through some of the basic categories of generative AI risks.
So there are 8 basic categories of Gen AI risk. The first category is impaired fairness. And this basically just means that there may be certain bias, as Richik mentioned, in the AI algorithm, resulting from unrepresented training data or misrepresentation of AI-generated content as human-created. The next category of risk is intellectual property infringement. And this is a pretty big risk. And it currently covers infringement of copyrighted material or otherwise legally protected materials. It also covers accidental disclosure of confidential IP into the public domain. There are several legal cases currently ongoing concerning this issue. For example, there are several lawsuits filed against a major technology company and AI developers where plaintiffs are alleging that the defendants are liable for copyright infringement under claims that the defendants have used the plaintiff's IP and data to train their AI models. Another big risk category where we are seeing the development of lawsuits is in data privacy and quality. This category deals with unauthorized disclosure of personal or sensitive information or the use of incomplete or inaccurate data for model training. Here, we're seeing lawsuits where plaintiffs are alleging that AI models are stealing personal information from millions of people by collecting their data online to train those AI tools, including ChatGPT. These cases emphasize arguments that AI poses a danger to human civilization in the form of misinformation, malware, and even autonomous weapon systems. And that brings us to the fourth category, which is malicious use. This involves malicious or harmful AI-generated content such as deepfakes, scams, phishing attempts, and hate speech. Other malicious uses include AI to impersonate company representatives or even imitate company branding, and that can result in reputational damages for many businesses. So the fifth risk for categories of genetic risk is data privacy. Um, the fifth risk ties into data privacy and malicious use, excuse me, and that category is security threats. This concerns vulnerabilities in AI systems. Examples include bypassing safety filters and manipulation of open source AI models. We're currently seeing increased volume and sophistication of cyber attacks from Gen AI enabled malware. One notable example of that is Fraud GPT. Fraud GPT was designed to create phishing emails, security cracking tools, and carding schemes. The sixth category that we'll discuss today is performance and explainability. So this is something that Rich mentioned earlier as well as the black box problem. So with performance and explainability, this is the inability to explain the model outputs or the model inaccuracies appropriately. This includes factually incorrect or outdated answers, or what's known as AI hallucinations, where AI models completely make up false information or outputs. For instance, there is a lawsuit ongoing involving radio host Mark Walters, who filed a lawsuit against an AI developer for libel after ChatGPT generated a fabricated complaint containing allegations against Mr. Walters for fraud and embezzlement. The suit stems from a journalist that asked ChatGPT to provide a summary of pending civil rights lawsuits filed in a U.S. district court. In response, ChatGPT indicated that Mr. Walters was a defendant in a fraud case, and that fraud case didn't even exist. It wasn't even true. So that's an example of AI hallucination where AI is just completely making up false information. The seventh category of risk on our list is strategic risk. This risk is the risk of non-compliance with standards or regulations, societal risk, and reputational risk. And then the last risk that we'll discuss today is third-party risk. And this just covers risk associated with the use of third-party AI tools, such as proprietary data that is used by public AI models.
Let's take a deeper dive into some of these AI lawsuits, and we'll talk a little bit about the types of things, pardon me, that can give rise to actions. We're going to use an example, a lawsuit against a healthcare group. A class action lawsuit was filed against United Health Group and its subsidiaries, claiming that they used an algorithm to deny rehab care to seriously ill patients, despite knowing that the algorithm they're using was wrong. The plaintiffs alleged in that case that the medical staff was pressured to follow an algorithm predicting patient stay lengths to deny payments to Medicare Advantage plan recipients. The manager set goals to keep the rehab stays within 1% of the algorithm's predictions. And the lawsuit alleges that United Health knew that the algorithm had a 90% error rate and denied claims knowing that only 0.2% of patients would appeal. It accuses United Health and its subsidiary of bad faith, unjust enrichment, and numerous insurance law violations. But this is the type of lawsuit that we're seeing here, is that based upon the output of something, they are basically saying that, listen, you don't really understand how the risks that are associated with your AI, and because you don't know those risks or you're ignoring those risks, you're putting people at you are putting contracts and people at risk. This is, fundamentally what we're going to see with a lot of the AI lawsuits out there is if you don't understand what you're using and how you're using it, and you can't explain it to you, you've opened yourself up to a wide degree of pardon me, of potential problems. Because if you don't know how you got your result, how can anybody else test that result? How can anybody else trust that result? this is really going to start creating issues for directors and officers in different companies, because those are, in many instances, those are the people that are become the targets of securities actions based upon AI mistakes. We're going to start seeing a rise in lawsuits where where the allegations are that directors and officers have failed to manage AI implementation and don't really understand the risks. So, pardon me, poor AI governance and technology failures will probably lead to a breach of duty claim against breach of fiduciary duty claim against officers and directors. And everyone knows those types of claims start damaging a company's reputation. They result in losses. And then after that, they often, not only will they result in securities class actions, but they risk, also becoming subject to shareholder derivative claims. A lot of these things can kind of be encapsulated in a lawsuit that was just filed earlier this year against Innodata Inc. In Innodata Inc., in that case, they could not explain how they were using AI, what they were doing, and in many cases, they started talking about things that they weren't actually using AI for, and they could not do using AI. So on February 21st, there was a lawsuit after those types of things were made public, and there was a 30% stock drop based upon a securities class action that alleged that the company was making misstatements about the use of AI. You're going to see similar lawsuits not targeting companies about their failure to properly explain how they're using AI or their failure to misrepresent how they're using AI. So the key risks for AI, the key risks for officers and directors in this space that we're looking at are legal liability for undisclosed AI or inaccurate AI disclosures and decisions, negligence claims resulting from bias, discrimination. There are also going to be negligence claims for privacy invasion, things of that nature. You're going to see product liability and breach of contract claims because people are going to start saying, listen, your AI, you promised me that you were using AI to make these decisions. However, the AI that you used was defective and you're not making good decisions. There are going to be misrepresentation claims probably for inaccurate AI reports and disclosures. And we're going to see, I think we're going to see a lot of litigation in the area of insurance, because you're going to see a number of claims if AI is causing business losses and there's no inadequate coverage on the company side. You're probably going to see coverage issues if an insurance company has looked into what a company was doing and said, listen, you didn't know enough about the AI that you're using to actually go out and make an insurance claim. We insured you as a director or an officer. We didn't insure that black box that you don't understand. So this is the world of claims and legal risks that we're seeing for officers and directors in this space. And we really think that, at the end of the day, while there may be claims against companies for sure, officers and directors are going to be held responsible for a lot of the decisions that they're made. Now, leading into this, and Jarman, if you can advance the slide, we're going to talk a little bit about AI's impact on fiduciary responsibilities for corporate fiduciaries. So we start where everything starts when you're talking about fiduciary duties for officers and directors, and that's the business judgment rule. Now, the law protects directors and officers when they're making tough choices based upon reasonable information. That is the business judgment rule, and that has been in place for a very long time, and it's what insulates good faith decisions, even if they turn out wrong. But the other side of the business judgment rule is that it doesn't protect decisions that are made without proper diligence or in bad faith, such as decisions based on fraud, self-dealing, but also if you're making a decision without knowing the underpinnings of it. If you don't understand why a decision is being made, you've really opened yourself up to claims that you're not following the business judgment rule. And that creates the Goldilocks dilemma that we've identified here, is that there's a problem if you're using too much AI without knowing what you're doing. That's really dangerous. But if you're not using enough AI, that can put you behind some of your competitors if they understand their AI better than you and they're going out there and making and utilizing it more efficiently than you are. And that in and of itself may also create a fiduciary duty issue because the failure, by putting yourself at a competitive disadvantage, you could be injuring the entity and the shareholders in the entity. Now, a lot of this stuff when we're talking about oversight responsibilities were covered in the Caremark decision. And Caremark introduced liability to officers and directors when they fail to set up reporting protocols and fail to set up monitoring protocols, um, or fail to even monitor operations even when they had nominal protocols in place. Now, if you take those underpinnings and look at AI specifically, the implications for AI in decision making are vast. And that means that boards must ensure that robust information and reporting systems are in place so they understand what's going on with their AI and they're effectively monitoring the AI operations and their decision making. We've not seen any lawsuits recently, coming up on these points just yet, but I anticipate they'll be coming up. And if you're looking for a corollary or some sort of analogy to the situation, I think you can think of the Boeing case, because what we've been talking, Boeing obviously is being held responsible for its failure to oversee aircraft safety, and now is facing significant legal consequences. I think similarly, you're going to see issues where companies are accused of failing to oversee that their AI is being used safely, and that will have significant legal consequences. I also think that you're going to see there's been an uptick in litigation with respect to derivative actions, where actions are brought by shareholders against companies for their failure to follow the Caremark oversight rules. Now, these things often, these things are sometimes can be dismissed, but right now they're running ahead at a clip of a 30% success rate, where plaintiffs are getting recoveries, which is always going to be a problem, and that's still depending on the numbers involved, a 30% a clip. If you're in baseball, batting 300 makes you an all-star. So these are some things that companies should be considering when they're making these AI decisions. Now, I don't want to say that AI is bad. I'm a big believer in AI. It improves decision making. It can enhance the quality of information that you're analyzing. It can help people make better decisions. It can help that, and by utilizing AI, you may be able to buttress your argument that you did everything in due care and did everything in the corporation's best interest. It also can increase efficiency. It automates routine tasks, and it allows people to focus on more important things and more important strategic decisions. And we talked earlier about how AI can be, some biases can be baked into AI, but if that's controlled for at the beginning when you're setting up your system, it can minimize human biases, and it can really lead to more objective decision making. So there are a lot of virtues to using AI. But again, it's one of those things that you have to make sure that you understand what it is that you're using, and you're working with people. And if they're using AI, you're understanding how they're using it. So some of the challenges that we really want to consider with respect to AI is, how much are you relying on it? Because over-reliance without human oversight of some of the questions that you're allowing AI to answer will affect whether or not a director or an officer has exercised independent judgment and due care. And again, a lot of these things are going to come down to transparency and explainability. The AI's inherent black box nature makes it difficult for people to understand what's going on and how it's making its recommendations. However, that's the exact sort of analysis that we're asking of officers and directors. We're asking them to understand what it is that they did and how they did it. So they're going to need to understand how the AI that they use to make decisions reach that conclusion. If they don't, they're going to face challenges of proving a good faith and reasonable understanding of what it was that they did. The other challenge that we have with AI is accountability. Who is responsible for AI-assisted decisions? That analysis can be really complex. Is it the person that designed the AI? Is it the person that's using the AI? Is it the person that is it the person that overuses AI in a certain issue and underuses it in others? Determining who actually is responsible for the decisions that are coming out of AI really then raises questions about, was the business judgment rule, what are the underpinnings of it followed in order for companies to take advantage of it? So we're telling our board clients that when you're using AI, especially if you're using it on a large scale basis, you really need to identify and monitor what critical activities you're using AI on, and you need to understand those AI processes. And then you need to implement and enforce oversight protocols through executive committees or other board committees so that they understand what's going on. This is a trend that's first started with respect to cybersecurity. For a very long time, boards were operating without any real cybersecurity sort of expert, and someone that could explain to the board what it was that they were doing to protect people's data, how they were using to protect people's data. The AI is going to require a very similar function, mostly because it adds gasoline to a lot of fires. It makes things, it multiplies the amount of data that's being analyzed, but that then oftentimes multiplies the amount of risk that can creep into a process. And companies need to have a plan in place where they can show that they considered these issues, they implemented a process to oversee these things, and then they enforce those processes throughout the company. What you'll see when you're doing a lot of board governance work is that if you're able to show your work and how you reached your decision, that is the best sort of way to buttress your business judgment rule protections. The inability to support your decisions, the inability to show that you considered options, and you considered certain processes, that is where companies get in place. There have been multiple data breach lawsuits against boards out there where the saving grace for the board, it was the fact that they had meetings and they had they had experts on their board that could explain to the board what was going on and the risks and the things that are out there. By showing that they had that sort of oversight at the board level, it really demonstrates to courts that you have properly you've probably discharged your duty. So when we're talking about the legal implications for some of this stuff, the courts are still grappling with how is the business judgment rule going to be affected by AI-assisted decisions. But the questions that are probably going to be asked, because they've been asked in other contexts, are, did the directors understand the AI system and its limitations? Was the AI system properly validated and tested? So not only did they understand what was going on, but they actually tested to make sure that the results that they were getting were within certain degrees of validation that was acceptable to the company. Did directors exercise independent judgment based upon the AI recommendations? So that means like they didn't just look at the answer that AI created or the recommendation the AI created. They actually analyzed it and used their independent judgment in making the final decision. Were AI recommendations reasonable and based upon relevant information? And this is the same analysis that courts will go through when they're wondering if, when a board relies on the advice of counsel or relies on the advice of consultants. Why are they acting on reasonable recommendations that were based on relevant information? It's the same thing that goes on with AI. It just becomes more difficult because it sometimes is difficult in understanding how what information AI was using and whether or not it's the underlying recommendations or the things that supported their recommendations were reasonable. And finally, were adequate safeguards in place to mitigate AI risks? That's the sort of analysis that courts are going to go through when they're evaluating how and if officers and directors should be held liable for AI assisted processes that resulted in decisions that may have injured other people. We're going to take a little bit now, and we've talked about some of the risks that are inherent just in the business judgment rule and just in directors and officers operating within their day-to-day business. But now there are regulations that are out there that are governing AI use, and Jarman's going to explain some of those points.
So now that we understand how the courts are handling AI situations, we can turn to how lawmakers are handling AI. So we'll jump into a discussion of how AI is being regulated and how those regulations are developing in the US and abroad. As of now, Europe sets the benchmark for the rest of the world with respect to landmark AI laws. And that's consistent with what we've seen so far from the standpoint of data privacy regulations, where the EU set the pace with GDPR, or the General Data Protection Regulation. So the EU also enacted the AI Act, and the AI Act will have a global reach outside of Europe in similar fashion to GDPR. Essentially, you must comply with EU's AI Act if you process any EU customer data. So the US has also begun establishing a footprint in the area of AI regulation as well. We anticipate a surge in AI-related claims and regulatory enforcement in the near future in the US. Businesses will need to stay on top of these developments in order to assess their risk profiles and ensure compliance with developing regimes in various jurisdictions. For example, many states in the US have already enacted or are in the process of enacting comprehensive data privacy regulations that impose certain obligations and restrictions on companies that use AI in automated decision-making situations. You can also turn to an executive order that was issued by the Biden administration earlier this year that's aimed at addressing concerns related to AI development. And that executive order establishes a framework for AI use governance. Additionally, we've also been witnessing states such as Colorado enact comprehensive legislation that governs AI use. And that's something that we're going to dive deeper into now. So Colorado enacts the first comprehensive AI laws in the US. So we'll take a deeper dive into the Colorado AI Act was signed into law in May of 2024, and it will go into effect in early 2026. Colorado is the first US state to enact comprehensive legislation regarding the use and development of AI. Although it is important to note that other states such as Utah have already enacted AI-focused laws that solely deal with AI disclosure requirements. However, Colorado's AI Act goes so much further and will require deployers and developers of high-risk AI systems doing business in Colorado to use reasonable care in preventing algorithmic discrimination, excuse me. So this type of discrimination includes any conditions in which the use of AI systems results in unlawful treatment or impact that disfavors individuals or a group of individuals on the basis of protected classifications such as age, disability, race, religion, or sex. So what are the requirements that come with this AI Act? There are two main requirements that come with it. The first is something that I mentioned just a moment ago, which is the requirement that deployers and developers that use AI exercise reasonable care in preventing discrimination from that AI use. This requirement requires a certain level of transparency in company AI use and training. It also requires deployers and developers of AI to notify the Colorado Attorney General in certain circumstances of known or reasonable foreseeable risk of discrimination from their AI use. The second main requirement from this act is a requirement that deployers and developers provide disclosure to consumers when they are interacting with an AI system as opposed to a real person. So essentially, if your business incorporates any AI practices where consumers are interacting with AI instead of a human, you would need to disclose this to the consumer so that they know that they're not dealing with real humans in that instance. So those are the two main requirements of Colorado's comprehensive AI law, and failure to comply with those requirements can result in some hefty violations and penalties. For example, if you fail to comply with the Colorado AI Act, it can result in violations up to $20,000 per violation. And so that's something that you definitely want to avoid if you're a business trying to get ahead on using AI in your operations. So Colorado's AI Act signals the future of AI regulation and is trending towards a state-by-state approach, similar to how we're seeing data privacy regulations in the US today. And so this is going to continue unless the federal government steps in and enacts legislation to establish a uniform metric across the country for regulation of AI. So now that we
Well,
understand some of the regulations of AI in general, we'll turn over to the insurance challenges.
one of the things that I always, whenever uh, I start identifying risks and things for my client, one of the next things that they ask me is, well, that's great, but how do we mitigate them? What do we need to do? And so one of the first things that obviously companies look to are insurance. Now, there are a lot of challenges with respect to insurance, just in AI, just because of how early we are in the widespread use of AI. There are a number of different policies that you might be able to look to provide coverage against AI risks just because of how they've been drafted in the past. And I won't go through this whole list up here, but you see those policies in there. And then there's some emerging AI insurance products that are out there that may be useful. And some companies like AIG are now coming up with some bespoke AI policies. But one of the things that I think is important to realize is that it's kind of early now to predict how insurers are going to handle AI risks. Um, they might try to exclude AI risks from existing policies and require additional endorsements. They're probably going to start asking a lot of questions about how companies are using AI during their underwriting processes. And policyholders need to review their current policies to ensure that there is coverage for what they're using AI for now, and consider AI-related changes, especially at renewal times, and seek advice from those that have handled AI-related issues to figure out what is it that you can, what is recoverable under under insurance and what is not. I think that what is probably going to happen in this industry, as it has happened in other industry, with respect to other things, and specifically with respect to cybersecurity, is initially insurance companies, when cyber claims started popping up more and more, um, they started excluding coverage for those things and saying specifically that this coverage does not apply to data breaches. They did that for a very long time, making it, and while they were pricing the market. And in the interim there, as many of us know on this call, cyber insurance became very expensive to get and sometimes impossible to get because the market had not been priced properly. In the interim there, then they started issuing endorsements for specific things. For example, you needed to get a separate endorsement for what we call social engineering claims. You needed to get an additional endorsement for ransomware claims. You needed to get an additional endorsement for data breach claims. Now that all those things have been, are being priced better into policies, and policies are becoming much more reasonable to get. They're still not as easy to get as other things that are out there, but there is a lot of, they've now priced the market and figured out what is the thing we need to be concerned about, what are the things that we need to exclude, what are the things that we can't insure under any circumstances. So you really need to take a look at that, how we got to how we handled cyber insurance. That's probably how we're going to handle AI. In the short term, they're probably going to see more and more exclusions that are out there. I think insurance companies are going to be based upon companies' answers to questions with regards to how they're using AI. I think they're going to find that they're going to have some claims denied because a company said, let's take an example of D&O coverage. Someone might take the stance that, listen, we are in the business of insuring that person over there. We were not in the business of insuring that black box that person relied on. Similarly, we are in the business of insuring, some of your, with respect to some of your employment practices. We're there to cover some discrimination claims, harassment claims, things of that nature. But if you made decisions based on AI and didn't understand how those decisions were made, we're not going to cover you because you didn't do your relevant due diligence with respect to these types of issues. So I think the insurance question is an emerging question, and the companies really need to start considering and reviewing their, whether or not the coverages that they have for cyber, for E&O, for D&O. Jarman had talked a little bit about IP related claims, whether their IP insurance will cover those things. whether the product liability insurance covers issues that if they're baking AI into some of their products. These are evaluations that companies need to make and figure out in order to determine whether or not they have coverage in place, whether or not they need to get coverage, and whether or not they're entering into an area that may never have coverage. These are critical questions that companies really need to start considering when they're talking about insurance challenges with respect to AI. And now when we're talking about how other ways to mitigate risk, a lot of this will come down to what we're calling strategic AI risk management. Companies need to start adapting a risk management approach to their use of AI as these regulations evolve. As you know, as Jarman talked a little bit about President Biden's executive order, Jarman talked about the EU AI Act, and these are the sorts of things that are going to start setting up the ground rules with respect to AI and what needs to and what companies need to understand, what guardrails they need to build into their systems, and how they can use AI to innovate their businesses, but while still being trustworthy users of AI. They need to start creating a framework for AI governance within their company. Industry standards are going to start coming into play. That's going to be helpful for a lot of companies, especially in regulated industries. They're going to need to understand what it is that's that the government is going to require as far as AI reporting goes, and they need to build their systems around those things. But I think really, we've talked about this numerous times, is they really need to promote the use of explainable AI. They need to be able to use explainable AI models to reduce the black box problem that they may be facing. And that will also help reduce their risk in analysis, their risk, by giving them better tools to analyze, the potential risks and potential liabilities. So we really need human and machine collaboration with respect to AI. You can't just say, listen, we turned that all over to AI. We programmed it. We worked with someone to give us this, to give us an understanding what's going on, and then we just outsource the decision making to those programs. And while larger companies obviously aren't doing that, they are working on these types of things. Some smaller companies that don't understand what's going on with AI have been known to just kind of put in things into AI and to develop new products, to develop new formulas. If they don't understand the basis for what the AI is doing, they're really putting themselves at risk. Again, in order to get AI related insurance, they really need to understand their AI strategy and really be able to explain to someone what they're using AI for, how they're using it, what goes into the AI they developed. And as specialized AI insurance policies are developed by insurance companies, that's probably going to be that's probably going to be the leading edge of what sort of reporting requirements are necessary, what sort of understanding of these processes will be required. Again, when we're talking about these things, officers and directors are going to be at the forefront of this stuff. They're going to have to understand AI and make sure that it aligns with business needs, business risks, and the vulnerabilities that are out there with respect to how the data is being used. If they don't do those things, they really run the risk of breaching the fiduciary duties to their companies and their shareholders. Again, some of the mitigation activities that are out there is, being explainable AI evangelists for their company, and the notion that everyone in the company that needs to use AI understands where those things are coming from. Incorporating human oversight into these things. Making sure that the algorithms that they're utilizing in their AI programs have been tested. Making sure that the population and the data population that's out there is sufficiently large that it gives you a broad base of information, but also is monitored to make sure that there aren't any biases built in. And again, rigorous output testing and continuous monitoring. So companies need to understand what they're putting into AI, what they're getting out of AI, and making sure that they're monitoring how they're using AI. One example, a recent example of how AI risk management can work is what Google did with its Gemini image generation feature. They took it offline when they realized that the feature was resulting with a number of bias issues. It was improperly creating faces. It was improperly analyzing faces. It was improperly it wouldn't recognize certain types of faces. When it realized that, they took it immediately off the monitor, they took it off of offline so they could go and test some of the AI dangers and do a little bit more due diligence and training, and fine tuning their models to make sure that the AI was keeping up with the needs of not only the companies, but the populations that were using it for it. It's quick responses to issues like that that can improve outcomes for companies, and also can help mitigate any sort of damage that may have resulted from their initial use of AI without enough information. And this gets us into the notion of what ethical considerations are out there with respect to AI. Jarman, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I can jump into the ethical considerations. AI is a very powerful tool. So with that, there are a lot of considerations in terms of ethics, and we've highlighted 6 of them here for you all today. So one major ethical consideration deals with AI data bias. So when dealing with this one, it's important for companies to not cut corners when it comes to preventing AI data bias. And that requires companies to utilize resources to test and monitor their AI systems. So you can't really hold back on deploying those resources to prevent bias, because as we discussed, the penalties can be pretty harsh if discrimination practices are in your AI uses. Another ethical consideration deals with the blurred lines between security and surveillance. So AI tools can be used to secure data and systems, but companies must be careful not to overstep in this area so as to unnecessarily impede on the privacy of employees or consumers. For example, facial recognition technologies and smart devices have the potential to invade privacy, tamper with government affairs, or enable corporate hacking. The next ethical consideration is accountability. And here, companies need to determine how to take responsibility for errors in AI outputs. Who do they blame? Who takes responsibility? And how is that responsibility divided amongst the leaders of businesses? Disclaiming all or substantial amounts of liability for AI outputs could negatively impact consumers who are harmed by these errors and left without remedy. Another ethical consideration deals with the consumers. Sorry, excuse me. Another, but outside of consumers, those aren't the only ones that businesses need to be concerned with. They also need to consider their workforce, and job displacement is a huge ethical consideration here. So as we know, there is job displacement resulting from AI use. As AI comes into the fold, jobs in old industries will be lost. So new technologies will lead to job losses in old industries. So companies must find a balance by creating new jobs where humans are overseeing how AI is used. That will kind of help balance out the job displacement we will see from AI taking place, some of the jobs from older industries. The next ethical consideration is transparency. We talked about that one a lot here today. As we wait for the establishment of formal AI regulations in many jurisdictions, companies must decide right now how much they should disclose with respect to their AI systems. So they have to find the balance between disclosing too much and not disclosing anything at all. And that's a major ethical consideration for companies. And then the last ethical consideration that we'll discuss is manipulation and deception in AI. AI can make the spread of disinformation, political suppression, and hostile societal division easier and more likely. Also, consumer digital footprints leave a wealth of information about consumers behind. While this information may be simply used by businesses to offer individuals more personalized services and to deliver targeted marketing, such knowledge can also be used to create manipulative tools that prey on people's weaknesses and guide them towards specific decisions. In essence, this can strip people away from their autonomy and remove the aspect of where consumers are making decisions for themselves.
So if you are in an organization that is thinking about utilizing AI, and under on a broad basis, as part of your process management, as part of your decision making, as part of your analytics. I think this slide is really important because it really talks about getting the AI balance just right. Again, we want to avoid the Goldilocks problem of going with things that are too hot, too cold, and we just need things that are just right. So boards really need to include AI experts or create AI committees to manage the risks and opportunities if they're going to be integrating AI into their operations. Um, and by that I mean, as far as integrating into the operation, there's smaller companies that are doing a lot of things on on an ad hoc basis with respect to AI. They are asking, they're asking programs to analyze documents and generate summaries. Sometimes they are providing certain bits of information and asking AI to extrapolate off of that. If that's being done, if people are using AI in an organization just to draft emails, that's not a problem. That's not something that you need to go create an AI committee for. However, if people are using AI to do product analysis, to do process analysis, and those processes and products are critical to your business, regardless of the size of your company, you need to understand and get the AI balance just right. If you overuse it without understanding it, it's going to create a problem. If you're not using it enough, and you're not taking advantage of opportunities that are out there, that also can create, put you at a disadvantage that people could point to. So I think that boards and management really need to take a hand in understanding what their AI use is, and making sure that the balance that they're using is proper. So as part of that, they should start integrating AI governance into their operating model. And by doing that, they can use expertise across their organization about how AI is being used, what they're using it for, and use it to train other people in the company about the use of AI and how things are being done. The balance of expertise and the ability to, will allow for companies to make quick decisions with respect to AI, and even adapt existing structures that they have so that they can keep up with the pace of technology and regulation. We're not saying we're not telling anyone that AI is bad. What we're saying is that if you don't understand how you're using it or what it is that you're using, you're opening yourself up to risks that you don't want. And to that end, the executives need to understand the regular requirements of AI disclosure and usage in these products. Jarman talked a little bit about the Colorado statute. That statute actually came about because a number of lawmakers got together last year to start talking about how they should be crafting AI regulations. There were lawmakers from, if I off the top of my head, I believe it was from 60 different state and federal organizations got together to have this discussion. Well, Colorado's law is just the first one. We're going to be seeing more and more things where they're asking about how are you making sure that AI is preventing against discrimination? How are you making sure that you are properly portraying how you're using AI, both to good and for bad? I'm sorry, both about, I shouldn't say for good or for bad. That's bad. That's improper wording. What it really means is, what I mean is how you're using it and making sure that you're not misrepresenting how you use it. And you need to understand, on top of all those things, when you're as with most things, once you've created a risk for the company, how can you mitigate that risk through insurance and decision making? And what's the reliability that you can count on with respect to the AI coverage that you have, or the policies that you have existing? Can they cover some of your AI decision making? And are the things that you're using AI for creating a risk that you might lose coverage? All in all, and overall, a lot of this stuff is going to be dependent on human oversight, making sure that people are actually overseeing how AI is being used, and and understand how AI is making its decisions, so that those people can make the right decisions for the companies and the entities. Um, you know, we're here at the end, and so I want to talk a little bit about about what's going on. But before we move on to our conclusion, I want to open up to questions. If people want to unmute themselves and ask questions, this is the time to do it. Well, I'm going to assume then that we have done such a great job of analyzing this issue for you that that we've answered all your questions. But if that's not the case, obviously at the end of this slide we have our contact information. You can reach out to us to discuss some of these things. But let's highlight a few key points today. AI is set to revolutionize business operations. There's no question about it. There are industries being built around it. NVIDIA, obviously, its shares are skyrocketing because all the computers that are incorporating AI. Microsoft is incorporating it into their operating systems. Apple just announced that it's going to be incorporating AI into a lot of its products. So it's offering significant opportunities for companies of all types to boost revenue, streamline planning, and enhance data protection. But I think what we're advocating for is that companies need to use careful planning when using AI. Since AI technology is rapidly evolving, it's crucial for organizations to regularly assess the AI-related risks that they have and making sure that they understand what's going on. In the short term, I would recommend a review of these things every 6 months until the environment of the use kind of stabilizes and things become more predictable. It's not dissimilar from what companies are currently doing with their cybersecurity and their data privacy policies and their protections. It's always important not only to put things in place, but to continually monitor it to make sure that things are working the way that you want. And as with most things, you need to balance the benefits and risks of AI. While it can bring substantial benefits, there's certain areas where it can introduce real, legal complications and uninsured liabilities. Making sure that you're using AI for the right things is critical. And as part of that decision, you really need to make sure that when you're using AI, there's an opportunity for your downside to be reduced. If you can't see that, then you might consider whether or not you want to use AI in that particular process. So AI again creates what we have called the Goldilocks dilemma. Using it too much risks losing. Using it too much can lead to unpredictable and potentially harmful outcomes, and not using it enough obviously can cause a company to lose a competitive edge. So, we want to find the sweet spot of AI, that Goldilocks zone where everything is just right. It's only by understanding and managing the risks that we have with AI that companies can effectively leverage AI to its full potential, and they can maintain the integrity of the operations and protect their reputations. We really appreciate the time that you spent with us today in covering this stuff. And again, there's our contact information. If you want to contact either Jarman or myself on these specific questions, please feel free to do so. And with that, unless there's anything else, I think we're done. Unless anyone has questions. And thank you for the thumbs up that I just saw. I'm taking that as a good sign that this was useful to you all. And if you have any other questions, obviously, please feel free to reach out to us.